Boker Tov, everyone, and welcome once again to Heartfelt Haftarah. Now, as it turns out, I'm starting to figure out my summer schedule, so I'm pre-recording this in anticipation that I'm going to be out of town during this Shabbat. At least that's the plan, but it never hurts to pre-record. So you can actually, I just recorded another Heartfelt Haftarah, and if you want to be a detective, you can go back and look at lighting and the clothing I'm wearing, and you can figure out what week I recorded this. I won't say explicitly, but in any case, it is a pre-recorded presentation. So this week, the week I presume to be out, is the Torah portion Bamidbar, the first portion of the book of Numbers. And our Haftarah is going to be coming from Hosea chapter 2. So, reaching for my trusty tent peg, Hosea. We've talked about him before. He's been quoted before in different Haftarot, but I'm going to revisit this because I'm not a first trial learner. Are you? Anyway, Hosea is a minor prophet, number one. Minor, again, as I always say, not because of the insignificance of what he has to say, but because of the length of his oracles, his prophetic book, which is not terribly long. Secondly, he is a northern prophet, which is to say that he was a prophet during the time of the kingdom of Israel, before it was destroyed by the Assyrians around 722 BCE. And he had his prophetic career in the north. In the North, they tended to be rhetorically more interesting, but also we're not completely clear on the background of all these people. So Amos, for example, presents himself as an agriculturalist and not a particularly prominent one, but he either could read and write or he had a follower who could read and write. Reading and writing is not an ordinary ability in ancient Israel, especially not for farmers. So we're not really sure how big of a farm macher he was. And Hosea here also, we really don't know who he is. He is not, as most of the southern prophets are, priests who would have been literate and educated. So his background is a mystery. In any case, he is a younger contemporary to Amos, what we would say is the 8th century BCE. And like Amos, he is inclined to pretty dramatic, fulsome, challenging language and metaphors. Sometimes we could call it extravagant. We could call it over the top. But in any case, he powerful rhetorician, and he has important things to say to the Northern Kingdom. His particular concern, well, we think of Amos as being mostly concerned with the social welfare of people, that is, the fate of the poor in the Northern Kingdom and things like this. Hosea is particularly focused on the issue of idolatry, what we today would call apostasy. The ancient Israelites didn't have that term. The pursuit of idols rather than proper service to the God of Israel. And Hosea selects the most startling metaphor for that makes us kind of uncomfortable in the modern world. And his metaphor is that Israel is whoring after foreign gods. That he puts forward the image of God and Israel as a married couple who should be faithful to one another. But Israel is not faithful. It goes after other gods, and the perfect analogy for him is infidelity and even prostitution. And he goes so far in this metaphor that he believes God commands him to marry a woman who is a prostitute, a woman named Gozer. And in his pronouncements, he talks about being married and how God has commanded him to marry this presumably unfaithful woman, precisely to illustrate what it is he's trying to convey to the people of the northern kingdom. So that's Hosea. Now, let's talk about the actual selection of the passage. Now, this year, uh, it's a special Shabbat. It's Shabbat Makshviim, which is actually any Shabbat that happens on the weekend of the beginning of a new month. There's nothing particularly notable about this, except that in ancient Israel, it was customary to bless the moon at the beginning of the month. And so there is a special blessing for the moon that happens in the traditional liturgy on this Shabbat. And oftentimes there's a special Haftarah passage that goes. It's almost always I think it's First Kings 20, which is Jonathan telling David that it's the new moon. The month is beginning. So we're not going to focus on that. We're going to stick with Hosea. So in this particular passage in Hosea 2, it swerves back and forth between divine promises, the carrot that Hosea is offering the people for being faithful to God, and the stick, the just how adulterous the people are, and how much it offends God, because people pursue other gods, which he calls Baalim or Baals. Now, the term Baal is an ambiguous one, but it plays a role in our particular Haftarah. So Baal literally means master or lord. So while we talk about Baal as if he were a specific god, sometimes the term is used for a number of different pagan gods, or a local pagan deity. So sometimes you'll hear Baal Hadash or Baal Damascus, meaning this is the patron god of Hadash, or this is the patron god of the city Damascus, or something like that. It's really hard to quite figure out exactly what's going on, and we would like neat and clean order. Oh, Baal is this god, which he is in the Canaanite uh, pantheon. He's the god of thunder and lightning. He's basically the equivalent of Thor or Zeus. He's an active and central god in the pantheon of the Canaanites because he brings rain. And rain is absolutely critical to the Eastern Mediterranean. So he's prominently served and worshipped, and not surprisingly, he would be a very attractive god to the Israelites, who face the same agricultural issues as the Canaanites, that they need rainwater in order to survive. So appealing to all the brand name deities would be a natural inclination when you're worried about whether you're going to get enough rain. So anyway, it also happens, and this is part of what's going on in the clever rhetoric of Hosea, is that Baal is also another name for a husband. Uh, Sometimes in biblical Hebrew, simply called Ish, your man, Ishi, my guy, or he could be called Baal, my master, my lord, which very hierarchical for us in marriage today, but that would mean my husband, the husband, or the master of the house, or something like that. So all of this plays into what Hosea does with his rhetoric. So let me just read to you a part of what he is doing. We're going to go to the end of this. We're looking at we're looking at around 216. Again, Hosea has just spent quite a few verses describing Israel as a harlot, a whore, a woman of infidelity, etc., etc. And now God is going to talk about bringing us back. So that is when I will entice her to me and lead her to the wilderness and speak to her heart. So this seems to be referencing back to the Exodus from Egypt. From there, I will give her back her vineyards and make the valley of trouble the door of hope. So now the pathway to disaster has been converted into the pathway of the future. There she will respond to me as when she was young, when she came up out of Egypt, she being the people Israel. And on that day, says the Eternal One, you will call me Ishi, my man, and no longer call me Bali, my master. So get it? There's a pun here between the god Baal and how you refer to a husband, et cetera, et cetera. So now the relationship between God and Israel is being reset, and it is like the Exodus, it is moving away from the tradition of worshiping Baals. For I will erase the name of the Baals from her mouth, and they shall no longer be mentioned by name. On that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the creeping things of the ground. Again, this is rhetoric that echoes back to the book of Exodus and the speaking of a covenant that not only with humanity, but also with people Israel, but on a cosmic level, God is in relationship with all the world. I will remove the bow, the sword, and war from the land and make them lie down in safety. So here we have again the first inklings that I mentioned a few weeks ago about the emergence of the idea of the messianic time. At this point, I always call it we will live happily ever after. And to lie down in safety, we'll see that again appearing in the rhetoric of the southern prophet Isaiah. And then this passage, which is a series of verses that have been reapplied in Jewish liturgy and practice several times, that close out the Haftarah. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and justice. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the eternal. That threefold betrothal passage has played a very interesting role in Jewish liturgy. It's a beautifully constructed passage in Hebrew, and the two places that it appears is not surprisingly in the wedding ceremony, where whoever is the misader, whoever is leading the service of the marriage between the husband and wife, will speak of this rhetoric of faithful betrothal. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and justice, and I will betroth you to me in love and compassion. Right. So perfect for a wedding liturgy, and it is used to this day in that way. Less obvious, but still interesting, is that if you lay tefillin, if you put on the phylacteries that go on your forehead and then are wrapped around for a right-hander, the left arm, for me, the right arm, and the box that is placed against your heart as you are putting that on. And remember that in the final concluding part of it, you take the last bits of the leather strap and you wrap them around your finger like a ring. There you have, I betroth you to me forever. I betroth you to me in righteousness and justice, in steadfast love and compassion. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness. Once again, we're reenacting the marriage of Israel to God, of the Jewish people to its faithful deity. So this has had a long afterlife, this particular one, and it's really a lovely image. Now we have been changing a lot of our terms and meaning about what being married is and what it means and what commitments it requires to us as the modern world presents us with new challenges. However, the essential idea of marriage, which is a relationship of singular devotion, still holds firm. And this is what Hosea is using as a metaphor. And this is what we continue to return to as the ideal state of the Jewish people in relationship to its God. God will be our God, and he will be our people, or she will be our people. So, with that, that concludes my anticipated heartfelt haftarah for this week. Thank you all for listening in, and I'll see you when I get back from my first summer trip.